Jack walked alone under the flickering neon lights of Varaxis Outpost. The city was full of noise, glowing signs, and people rushing past. But Jack didn't care about any of it. His shift was over, and his only goal was to get home, heat a meal, and maybe watch some old Earth vids. He lived a simple life, one cargo delivery at a time. But that night, everything changed. As he passed a narrow alley between two rusting towers, he heard it. A soft sound. A strange, broken whimper. Not like a drunk citizen or malfunctioning bot, it sounded. Afraid, small, and not quite human. Jack paused, looked over his shoulder, and listened again. There it was, a tiny sob. He should have walked away. The alleys of Varaxis were dangerous after dark, but something tugged at his chest. Something old and human. He took a deep breath and stepped into the shadows. The alley smelled of oil and rotting food. His boots crunched softly against broken glass and gravel. He followed the sound to the far end, where a pile of junk and crates leaned. Against the wall, then he saw her. She was small, curled up in a tight ball behind a metal bin. Her skin was pale violet, almost glowing under the moonlight. Her eyes were huge, reflecting the light like a cat's. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and her wrists chained to a metal pole like a prisoner. She looked barely alive. "Hey," Jack said gently, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl's eyes widened in panic. She struggled back, her chains rattling loudly. Then, without warning, she slapped him. It was weak, more like a push than a strike. Her voice cracked as she shouted something in her alien language. But Jack didn't move, he just stayed still, his expression soft. "I'm not your enemy," he said again. The girl froze, staring at him, breathing fast. Then, her body shivered and slumped against the wall. Tears rolled down her cheeks. And, in a soft, trembling voice, she whispered in broken English, "Thank you for not walking away." Jack knelt beside her, careful not to touch her. "Who did this to you?" he asked, but she only shook her head, her body shaking. He looked at the chains, old and rusty, but locked tight. He reached into his belt pouch and pulled out a small plasma cutter, used for cargo crates. He lit it, and the blue flame hissed softly. The girl flinched back, crying out in fear. "Shh, it's okay. I'm freeing you," Jack said, his voice calm. He slowly cut through the chains one by one. Each time a piece fell, the girl flinched like she expected pain. But Jack never hurt her. When the last link snapped, her hands fell free. She looked at them like she didn't believe it. Then she looked at him before either of them could speak. A loud mechanical stomp echoed down the alley. Jack turned his head sharply. Two huge alien guards were heading toward them, dressed in dark armor. "Scanning the area, slavers," the girl whispered, her voice full of fear. "They come for me?" Jack stood up quickly, grabbed her hand without thinking. "Come on, we have to move." She didn't resist. Despite everything, she let him pull her up. Her legs wobbled, but she ran with him. They sprinted out of the alley, downside, paths and across empty streets. Sirens began to scream in the distance. Jack took sharp turns, used tunnels he remembered from old warehouse routes. The girl clung to him, her breathing ragged. At one point, she stumbled and he caught her in his arms. Her skin felt ice cold. After minutes of running, they ducked into an old maintenance building. Jack keyed in a hidden door code and helped her inside. The door slid shut behind them, and silence returned. The girl collapsed onto the floor, coughing, her hair sticking to her face. Jack knelt beside her and handed her his water flask. She took it with shaking hands. "Why? Help me?" she asked, barely able to form the words. Jack looked at her. Really looked. She was just a girl, scared, hurt, and thrown away like trash. "No one else did," he replied softly. Her lips trembled. She stared at him for a long moment, then whispered again. "Thank you, human." Jack nodded. "You're safe here for now." But even as he said those words, he knew it was a lie. Nothing about this was safe, and whatever he had just stepped into, it wasn't over. Not even close. Jack stared at the screen. On the wall, his heart pounding in his chest. It had just lit up with a red warning. His face glowing bright under the words, "Wanted, human male. Suspected kidnapping of registered alien property reward, 20,000 credits." He didn't know whether to laugh or scream. The girl, still curled up near the heater, looked up at him. Her eyes narrowed, sensing his fear. "What is wrong?" she asked softly. Jack turned the screen to her. She froze, her hands clutching her torn shirt. "That is me," she whispered. "They call me property." Jack took a deep breath, rubbed his forehead. "You're not property," he said. "You're a person, damn it." But the system didn't care. To the galaxy, some aliens had less rights than cargo crates. He paced the room, his boots making soft thuds on the metal floor. "This is bad," he muttered. "They'll come. Fast, maybe tonight." The girl stood slowly, still weak, but her posture was proud. "I can go," she said. "I will leave so you are safe." Jack looked at her sharply. "No, you're not going anywhere alone," he said. "You'd last 5 minutes." He walked over to the wall, opened a hidden panel, and pulled out a small backpack. Inside were emergency supplies, stims, food bars, credits, and a pulse pistol. He handed her a food bar first. "Eat this, then we move." She hesitated, eyes flicking from the bar to him. "Why?" she asked. "Why help me?" Jack shrugged, forcing a weak smile. "Because I couldn't stand seeing you like that," he said. "And because I've been alone too." She took the bar, sat back down, and ate in silence. Her hands still trembled, but her eyes were calmer. Now Jack checked the scanner on the wall. 2 patrols were moving toward the area. His time was running out. "We're leaving through the tunnels," Jack said, pulling on a worn jacket. "They're old maintenance shafts, not on public maps." He helped her up. "What's your name?" he asked as they moved to the back exit. She paused, then whispered, "Liari." Jack smiled slightly. "All right, Liari, stay close." They stepped into the underground tunnels, dark, narrow, and cold. The passage smelled of rust and old oil. Jack led the way with a flickering light stick. Liari followed without a word, her feet silent on the floor. She moved like someone who had spent her whole life hiding. As they turned a corner, Jack suddenly raised his hand. "Stop," he whispered. "Up ahead." The faint red glow of a motion sensor blinked above a door. Jack cursed under his breath. "They upgraded security," he said. "Didn't expect that." He knelt beside the panel and began rewiring it. But Liari moved past him, studied the wall, then touched a hidden button. A side grate slid open silently, revealing a crawl space. Jack blinked, impressed. "Where'd you learn that?" he asked. She gave a tiny smile. "Slave tunnels," she replied bitterly. "Built for hiding, not escaping." They crawled through the small passage, then dropped into a storage room. Jack checked his wristpad. "They'll be checking public transport hubs and skyways," he said. "We need to disappear, not just hide." Liari looked at him, her face more serious now. "There is one place," she said. "Far edge of city, broken tower." Jack raised an eyebrow. "I know that place. It's abandoned, full of old tech." She nodded. "I was there, before they found me. It is dark, forgotten, and deep underground." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Let's go." They moved quickly, staying low, avoiding scanners. As they walked, Jack noticed Liari moving faster, her steps stronger. She was healing slowly, but her spirit, her fire, it was there, hidden behind the bruises. She was not just a victim. She was something more. When they reached the broken tower, it looked like a skeleton of metal and glass. Twisted beams reached into the sky and broken elevators hung like bones. Jack helped her through a small hatch, and they climbed down into the depths. No cameras, no guards, just silence and dust. Inside, Liari showed him an old chamber lined with shattered screens and power cables. "This was once a control room," she said softly. Before war came, Jack set down his gear, started checking the power lines. "I can get the heat on," he said. "Maybe even signal blockers." Layari walked to a cracked window and looked out at the city lights far above. "You risked everything for me," she whispered. Jack paused. "Would do it again," he replied. Then without warning, Layari stepped toward him. She reached out and touched his arm gently. "I don't understand you, human," she said. "You are strange, stubborn, but not cruel." Jack looked into her violet eyes. "Get some rest," he said quietly. "Tomorrow we figure out what to do next." As Layari lay down on an old padded bench, Jack stood watch by the door. But even in the quiet, his mind was racing. He had crossed a line. This wasn't just rescue anymore. This was war with a system that saw her as nothing, and now, he was part of it. The sun never touched the old tower. Buried deep under layers of forgotten metal and broken glass, Jack sat on the edge of an old crate, staring at the pale violet girl sleeping beside him. Layari. Even in sleep, her face looked tense, like her nightmares were still chasing her. He looked around the abandoned control room. Wires dangled from the ceiling like vines. A few weak lights flickered, powered by the backup generator he managed to connect. It wasn't much, but it was home. For now, Jack stood up, stretching. His arms then, as he turned toward the bench where Layari lay, something caught his eye. Her shirt had shifted slightly, exposing the skin on her back, and there, etched into her skin like glowing ink, were 3 curved symbols, beautiful and ancient, and completely unmistakable. Jack stepped closer, blinking. He had seen those marks before, long ago, on a cargo shipment protected by the Empire. Itself, they were royal symbols. From the house of Kirillin, one of the old noble bloodlines, Layari was royal blood. His heart pounded. He had rescued a runaway princess, or someone they once called a princess, and now the entire system was hunting her, not just for escape, but for treason. Just then, her eyes opened slowly. She saw Jack staring, and her body froze. She sat up quickly, pulling her shirt back into place. "You saw them," she whispered, her voice cold, not angry, but scared. Jack sat back down and nodded. "I wasn't trying to look," he said, "but you should have told me." Layari looked away, hugging her knees. "No one trusts royals anymore," she said, her voice trembling. "And I'm not one, not anymore." Jack didn't speak, he just waited. After a long silence, Layari finally began to speak again. "When I was born, my father was a high lord," she said. "He ruled 5 colonies, had fleets under his command, and servants at his feet." She looked up, eyes filled with pain. "But I was small, too weak, not like the others. They wanted warriors," she continued, "not daughters. So he promised me to another noble house as part of a deal, one I never agreed to." Jack clenched his jaw. "They tried to marry you off?" She nodded slowly. "To a creature twice my age with scars and dead eyes," she said. "I refused." Jack sat forward. "So your father punished you?" Layari gave a sad smile. "He called it mercy," she whispered. "He faked my death, told the public I died from sickness. But in secret, he sold me to slavers, paid them to take me far away and never return." Jack's fists tightened. He had seen evil before. Pirates, smugglers, corrupt officers, but to do that to your own daughter. "And now," Layari said softly, "they want to make sure I never come back." Jack stood up and walked to the corner of the room. He pulled out a data pad and scanned the comms network. No alerts nearby. But city patrols were still active, still looking for them. "You can't keep running forever," Jack said without turning around. "They won't stop until you're either captured or dead." Layari stood too, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. "Then maybe I should give up," she said quietly. "Let them take me." Jack turned sharply. "No," he said firmly. "You've come this far, Layari. You survived. Chains, beatings, betrayal. You don't stop here." She stared at him, her eyes glassy with emotion. "Why do you care?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Jack stepped closer, looking right into her eyes. "I know enough," he said. "You were alone, scared, and hurt, and you still fought back. That's more than most people ever do." Layari's lips parted, but no words came out. A single tear slid down her cheek. She looked away quickly and sat back down. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Jack cleared his throat. "If you really want to stop them, you'll have to show the galaxy the truth." Layari turned to him slowly. "What do you mean?" Jack lifted his datapad. "A message," he said. "A broadcast. Holographic. Undeniable. Show your face. Tell your story. Make them see what your father did." Layari looked terrified. "They'll kill me before I speak," she said. Jack nodded. "Maybe, but if you don't speak, they win." She sat in silence, thinking, her fingers trembling. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. Jack sat beside her. "I'll help you," he said. "We do it together." She looked at him, her voice so soft it was barely a whisper. "You're not like others." Jack smiled faintly. "Maybe. I'm just too stupid to quit." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, the storm clouds thick and heavy. But inside that broken tower, a spark had been lit. A human and a royal exile, alone, hunted and outnumbered, but not broken. Not yet. The storm above the tower rumbled louder that morning. Cold wind pushed through the cracks in the metal walls. But Jack didn't stop working. He crouched beside the console, connecting wires, rerouting power, setting up a signal blocker. Each second mattered now. Layari stood nearby, watching silently. She wore an old cloak Jack had found. Her violet eyes were sharper now, her movements more stable. She was recovering, slowly, but she was still scared. "You've done this before," she said quietly. Jack didn't look up, just kept working. "Long time ago," he replied. "Back when I thought I could change things." He smiled faintly. "Turns out, helping one person might be enough." Suddenly, the signal blocker began to blink red. Jack's head snapped up. "Damn it," he hissed. "They're scanning for energy leaks. We have 5 minutes, maybe less." Layari's breath caught. "They found us?" Jack nodded, grabbing the pistol from his pack. "You need to go, now," he said. "Take the lower tunnel. It leads to the old rail system." She stepped back, eyes wide. "What about you?" "I'll distract them," Jack said, voice firm. "They want me too, remember?" "No," Layari whispered. "I won't leave you again." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're the one who matters now," he said. "You still have a future, I don't." Before she could argue, he pushed a small comm piece into her hand. "Keep this on. I'll find you later." The floor shook with heavy footsteps. A team of mercenaries had entered the building. Jack gave her one last look, then turned and disappeared into the shadows. Layari hesitated, torn between fear and something new, anger. But finally, she turned and ran, vanishing into the darkness below. Jack crouched near the broken elevator shaft, waiting. His breath was steady, his hand gripping the pistol. Then they came. 3 mercs in black armor, weapons ready, scanning with visors, room still warm, one of them said. They were just here. Jack stepped out of the shadows and fired. The first merc dropped instantly. The others dove, for cover, shouting orders. But Jack was already moving, fast and focused. He fired again, but something hit him hard from the side. A shock dart. His body jolted with pain, and he crashed to the floor. His pistol slid out of reach. Rough hands grabbed him. A boot pressed against his back. "Got the human," a deep voice growled. "Take him alive. He's the one who helped the asset escape." Jack clenched his jaw as they dragged him up. They strapped his arms, tied his legs, and pushed him against the wall. One of the mercs leaned close. "Where's the girl?" he asked. "Talk, and maybe we don't tear you apart." Jack spat blood and smiled. "Guess you'll have to work for it," he muttered. The merc raised his fist. But before he could strike, a sharp sound echoed through the chamber. Zart, Plasma bolt slammed into his helmet, throwing him back. The other mercs turned in shock. From the shadows, a figure stepped out, small, cloaked, and glowing. Liari. She held Jack's second pistol with both hands, trembling but steady. "You will not hurt him," she said coldly. The mercs laughed. "Little Royal's got a weapon," one mocked. "Cute, let's take her alive." But Liari didn't flinch. She fired again, then again. One merc fell, the second staggered, the last one rushed her. She spun to the side, barely dodging the strike, and slammed her elbow into his visor. Jack watched from the floor, stunned. She wasn't just defending, she was fighting. Not like a warrior, not trained, but with raw will, like someone who refused to be a victim again. The last merc tried to grab her. Jack, despite the pain, kicked out his foot and tripped him. Liari fired one last shot, point blank. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of her breathing. She dropped the gun, ran to Jack, and knelt beside him. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked, her voice shaking. Jack grinned through the pain. "Never better," he said. "Remind me never to make you mad." She let out a shaky laugh, then pressed her forehead to his. "I said I wouldn't leave you," she whispered. "And I meant it." Together they dragged the bodies into the shadows. Liari helped remove Jack's restraints, cleaned his wounds with shaking hands. "You saved me," he said softly. "Now you came back to save me again." She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "You gave me courage," she said. "You believed in me before I believed in myself." Jack leaned back against the wall, his body aching. He looked at her, really looked. The scared girl in chains was gone. Now she was something else. Not just a survivor, but a fighter. "We're not done yet," Jack said. "This was just the welcome party." Liari nodded. "Then we fight," she said. Together. The storm had passed, but inside the broken tower the air still felt heavy. Jack leaned against the wall, eyes half open, his body sore from the fight. Liari sat beside him, her hands red from patching his wounds. Neither of them spoke for a long time, but they didn't need to. Silence was safer now. On the floor beside the mercenary's body, something blinked. A small black device, barely the size of a credit chip. Jack reached for it slowly. Liari helped him sit up straighter. He clicked it open, and a hologram flickered to life. Blue lines shaped into alien symbols, glowing in the air like ghosts. Liari's eyes widened as she read them. Her hand flew to her mouth, her body shaking. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. "What is it?" She didn't answer right away. Then, barely above a whisper, she spoke. "It's from him. My father." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Your father sent that merc team?" Liari nodded, her hands trembling. She pointed at the message, translating. As it scrolled by, "Locate Liari, terminate before sunrise, leave no body." Her voice cracked. "He gave the order himself." The words hung in the air like a blade. Jack clenched his jaw. "So he really wants you gone. Not hidden, not shamed, erased." Liari stood up, pacing. She looked like she might collapse or scream. But then, something changed. Her breath slowed. Her hands stopped shaking. She turned around and looked at Jack, not with fear, but with fire. "Then I stopped running," she said quietly. "I won't let him control me anymore." Jack pushed himself to his feet, wincing in pain. "Are you ready for that?" he asked. "Because if we go against him, there's no turning back." Liari stared at him, her voice steady. "I was born as someone's daughter," she said. "Now I choose who I am." Jack nodded. They began packing, gathering what they could salvage. Tools, weapons, and the device. They planned to head toward the resistance sector, a place known for rebels and truth leakers. If they could get this file broadcasted, they could expose the royal betrayal. But before they left, Jack stopped, his hand resting on her shoulder. "There's something I need to say," he murmured. Liari turned, her eyes searching his face. He hesitated, then added, "When you first slapped me, I knew you were terrified, but you still had fight in you." She blinked, surprised. "I was afraid," she whispered. "But I didn't want to look weak." Jack chuckled softly. Trust me, you didn't. She looked down for a moment, then suddenly raised her hand and slapped him again. Not hard, but enough to shock him. Jack's mouth fell open. What was that for? He asked, stunned. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she smiled. For saving me, she said, voice breaking. And for staying when you could have run. Jack was speechless. She stepped closer, placed her hand gently on his chest. I can't. Promise I'll be brave every moment, she said, but I can promise this. I'll stand beside you. Jack looked at her and something inside him shifted. Not just sympathy, not just protection. Connection. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small badge. His old security clearance. Then let's make it official, he said. Partners. Liari took it with both hands, nodded once. Partners. They left the tower just before dawn. The city looked calm, but Jack knew better. Eyes were watching. They took the underground rails, staying low. As they moved through the tunnels, Jack noticed Liari's steps getting steadier, her eyes sharper. She wasn't the same girl he found in chains. She was becoming something else, strong, dangerous, determined. They reached a lower safe zone by nightfall, hidden beneath a merchant district. Jack contacted an old friend from his courier days, a hacker named Voss. Voss appeared on the holoscreen, his face full of metal implants and glowing blue eyes. You really pulled the tiger's tail, Jack, he said, laughing. Half the royal fleet's looking for you. Jack held up the device. We've got proof, he said. Help us spread it. Voss grinned. Send it over. I'll make it galaxy famous. As the file uploaded, Liari stood behind Jack, staring. At the screen, her heart raced, her breath caught. This was it. The truth about her father, her exile, her fight, was about to go public. But just as the file reached 87%, the power cut. Everything went black. Then a voice echoed from the shadows. You should have stayed hidden, girl. Liari turned slowly. A tall figure stepped out from the darkness, his armor glowing. With royal emblems, another hunter. But this one wasn't just after her. He was family. The emergency lights flickered back on, dim and weak. Jack reached for his pistol, but it was too late. The armored figure had already stepped into the room. His eyes glowed beneath a silver helmet, and a long black cloak dragged behind him like shadow. Liari stood frozen, her voice barely above a whisper. Kellen. The man took off his helmet, revealing a sharp face with violet eyes, just like hers. But his expression was cold, unreadable. Hello, little sister, he said calmly. You've made quite a mess. Jack stepped between them, his voice firm. Stay back. Kellen raised an eyebrow, amused. Ah, the human, he said. The one who saved our broken girl? Liari stepped forward, her voice shaking. You're working for father. Kellen tilted his head. I'm working for the bloodline, he said. You never understood loyalty. You call it loyalty, Liari said. I call it slavery. Kellen's eyes narrowed. You were chosen to be married into power, he said. You threw it away. Liari clenched her fists. I was a child, she said, not a trade item. Jack could feel the tension rising like a storm. He knew one wrong move would get them both killed, but something in Kellen's tone made him pause. You said you were sent to bring her back alive, Jack said slowly. Why? Kellen turned to him with a thin smile. Because father doesn't want her truth spreading, he replied. If she dies now, she becomes a symbol. Liari's face darkened. So he wants to lock me away instead. Kellen nodded. He plans to keep you in the core, hidden, silenced. And you agree with that? Agree with, she asked. Kellen looked down for a moment. Agree or not, it's my duty. Jack stepped forward. You're his son, not his dog. Kellen's eyes flashed. You don't know anything about us, he said. He raised us with fear, not love. He turned back to Liari. And you're the only one who dared to run. The silence that followed was thick. Liari looked at her brother, not as an enemy, but as someone still trapped in a cage. You can come with us, she said quietly. You don't have to serve him anymore. For a moment, Kellen looked uncertain, but then he straightened. I can't, he said. My name is tied to my fate is sealed. Suddenly, an alarm blared. Voss had restored the power and resumed the upload. Transfer complete, the voice said. Data sent to network. Kellen turned sharply. What did you do? Jack grinned. We just told the galaxy who your father really is. Kellen's fists clenched. You don't understand what you've done. He said, this will start a war. Then let it come, Lyari said. Truth should never hide. Behind peace. Kellen looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. You were always the fire, he said. Even when we were small. He stepped back slowly, placing his helmet back on. I should take you now, he said. But I won't. Jack blinked. Why not? Kellen looked away. Because, maybe you're right. Then he walked toward the shadows, paused at the doorway and said, They will send others worse than me. Prepare yourselves. And with that, he disappeared into the tunnel beyond. Hours passed in silence. Lyari sat near the transmitter console, staring into the void. Jack knelt beside her. You all right? She nodded slowly. I thought he'd kill me, she said. But he didn't. Jack placed a hand on her shoulder. He saw something human in you, he said. Maybe that's what scared him most. She let out a breath. I don't know what's coming next, she whispered. Jack stood looking out the cracked window at the glowing skyline. Revolution, he said. Once your story spreads, nothing stays the same. Suddenly Voss burst in, eyes wide. Guys, he gasped. You need to see this. He threw a projection screen onto the wall. News feeds from across the system played at once. Screen showed Lyari's face, her voice, the files, the proof. A storm of comments, shares, and political reactions filled the screen. She did. It, Voss whispered. She broke the silence. Lyari stared at herself on the screen. She saw fear in her eyes, but also courage. I'm not a princess anymore, she said softly. Jack smiled. No, he said. You're a symbol. The people were already rising. Protests, chants, fire across the skies. The royal grip was breaking. And at the center of it all stood a girl who once cried in chains. Now, holding the power of truth. Jack placed a hand on his weapon. This isn't over, he said. They'll come for us. Lyari nodded. Then we'll be ready. Together, they stood tall, not as slave and rescuer, but as warriors, side by side, waiting for the storm to come. The sky above Varaxis darkened like the world had stopped breathing. A giant shadow fell across the horizon, cold, silent, and terrifying. The royal flagship had arrived. It hovered above the city, like a god waiting to strike. Its engines roared, like thunder, and its lights bathed the colony in gold fire. Inside the safe house, Jack and Lyari watched from the cracked window. Voss paced nervously, chewing on a wire. Yep, he muttered. That's definitely your dad's death machine. Lyari didn't flinch. She stood tall, arms crossed, her violet cloak fluttering. In the rising wind, he came in person, she said coldly. He wants to end this himself. Jack stepped beside her. Let him try. Suddenly, a message alert beeped on the console, encrypted, locked, and royal sealed. Jack opened it. A 3D hologram filled the room. Lord Kyerlin, tall and sharp-eyed, dressed in regal armor. His voice was slow and venomous. Lyari, he said, I offer you one final mercy. The air grew still. The message continued. Surrender to me before nightfall, and I will spare your human friend. Refuse, and both of you will vanish from history. The message cut off. The room sank into silence again. Jack looked at Lyari. You know what he's doing, he said. Lyari nodded. He's afraid, she replied. Of me, of the truth. Voss turned around, wide-eyed. So what's the plan, hero lady? Jack grinned. We give the galaxy a show. That night they climbed the tower, the same one where Jack first hid her, now repurposed, rigged with power lines, amplifiers, and an old broadcast antenna. Voss connected wires, cursed at sparks, and laughed like a mad genius. "We're live-in 5, he called. "You sure about this?" Liari stepped into the center of the rooftop, her cloak snapping in the wind. "Yes," she said. "Let him watch." Jack held the camera steady, then nodded. Liari spoke, her voice carried by the winds. "People of the outer worlds," she said. "My name is Liari, born of the Kirlin house. I was betrayed by my own blood, chained and sold. But I stand here now, not as a princess, but as proof that truth cannot be silenced." She raised her hand. Behind her, the giant flagship blinked like an angry eye. "You who suffer in silence, you who are cast aside, this is not your end. This is our beginning." The broadcast spread like fire, across colonies, ships, and star stations. Screens lit up, eyes widened, crowds gathered, and in the royal command ship, Lord Kirlin's face twisted in rage. He sent the order. "All cannons target the tower." From above, golden light gathered beneath the flagship's hull. Charging for destruction, Jack turned to Liari. "We have 30 seconds. Liari looked straight ahead. "I'm not leaving," Jack smiled. "I didn't say I was." Voss screamed from the corner. "Guys, jump now or become space dust." Jack grabbed Liari's hand. Together they ran. They jumped from the tower just as the beam exploded behind them, blinding, burning, shaking the city below. They landed hard in a drop pod Voss had rigged. For escape, the hatch sealed, the pod launched. Flames chased them as they fell into the lower district, tumbling into dust and smoke. Jack groaned, pulling himself up. "You good?" he asked. Liari coughed, then laughed. "Alive." Above, the tower was gone, burned to ash, but the message had already spread. Too late to erase it now, too late to silence her voice. All across the stars, colonies rebelled, protests exploded, royal flags burned, and Lord Kirlin's name became a curse on every planet where truth had been denied. Days later, Liari stood in front of a new crowd. This time, not hiding, not running, a council of planets had called for royal trials, and Liari had been named a key witness. Jack stood beside her, bruised, tired, but proud. When she took the stage, the silence was deep, and when she spoke, no one looked away. "I was sold," she said, "but I was saved. I was forgotten," she continued, "but I found my voice. And that voice was heard because of one human who refused to walk away." She turned to Jack, and in front of everyone she held his hand. "He didn't save a princess," she said. "He saved a person." The crowd stood, applauding, cheering, shouting her name, his name, not as royalty, not as legend, but as the two souls who sparked a fire that burned down an empire. Later that night, under the stars, Jack sat with Liari on a quiet rooftop. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "You slapped me the first time we met." She smiled, "And I'll slap you again if you ever try to leave." He laughed. "Fair enough." She leaned her head against his shoulder and whispered just once more, "Thank you for saving me." Jack smiled, closed his eyes, and whispered back, "No, thank you for fighting back." Together they sat in silence. The stars above finally felt warm again,